set up here. I don't know how it's gonna look. In one picture it looks good, and others it looks shrunk. So cool. I'd like to be able to lean forward so I can actually read what you guys are writing, but that might not happen. Anyways, we got about 15 minutes until this starts, so I'm just gonna wait till people come in the room, I suppose. I did say 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, but I'm a guy who's always a little on the early side, so I hope everybody can hear me here, and we'll wait till 8 o'clock and I'll get started. I got a few things that I'm gonna go over real quick, and then I'll take your questions and see what I can do for answering them. So yeah, just hang out, send me some love, I'll send you some love. Welcome to the shop, by the way. If you haven't noticed, I actually have power now. There's actually power in the shop, which is awesome. So I got LED lights everywhere. Of course, it had to pick today to be like 90 degrees again. So yeah, I gotta have a fan on me, so you're gonna hear the fan running. And I gotta have water, all that good jazz. So I don't know if I want to tip this up a little bit more, just to make sure that if I lean forward to read a comment, that I don't completely go off screen. I'm gonna look like an old man doing this too. I'm gonna be like, what? What did you write? So hopefully the comments don't fly by too much. I'll try and answer everybody's question as best I can, if I can. That's the other thing. I'm not a proclaimed expert, but I have had a lot of experience tearing these trucks down and building them back up. So won't we all sit tight for a couple minutes, and I'll be back. I'm just gonna make sure that everything's all ready to go here and kind of go over my notes and everything. So alright, I will be back in a handful of minutes, so hopefully at 8 o'clock we're ready to rock and roll. So we got our first comment. Yo man, I got a 95, what is interchangeable? There's a lot of interchangeability between the Pathfinder, the 4-wheel drive hard body, the 2-wheel drive hard body. There's a lot. There's a ton of it. The things that don't interchange would be suspension components between the 2-wheel and 4-wheel drive, obviously. The suspension for the rear of the Pathfinder and the rear of the hard body, those are completely different. But yeah, there's so much stuff. I mean, I wish I could actually, honestly, this book right here, this is the book I've been using for building Pathfinder pickup since the beginning here. It's my journal that I've kept all my information in, so I know what's left to do and what I have done. I should go through this someday and actually write a Nissan hardbody Pathfinder interchange book. They've got them for Chevy, they got them for Ford. I have never seen one for a Nissan. I know that the software, the fast software does do interchange stuff, but you gotta have the program, you gotta have all the models loaded, and so it's like that's a lot of stuff for, and you might not get the answer you want. Like the fast I have does a lot of interchange for overseas stuff that really doesn't do me a lot of good. But I found a lot of things across the hard body, Pathfinder, Frontier, and Xterra line. There's a lot of crossover in those, obviously, because they were all kind of, you know, the Xterra and the Frontier were probably more than anything sheet metal updates. Obviously, you got the 3.3 motor, but there's really not much physically different on the engine side, which is why the 3.3 dropped right into my 92 Pathfinder. You're going to find that a lot of switches can be crossed. You can find a lot of hoses that can be crossed. There's a lot of things that can be done that way. So, in this book here, as I said, I should probably go through it one of these days and actually write down everything that I've used and everything that I did, and it'll probably blow your mind, because I don't remember a lot of the stuff. I mean, there's probably between 15 and 20 different trucks that I've used to build the Double Dare project. Between trucks that I've purchased and tore apart and parted out, and all the junkyard runs that I've done for, well, I started doing junkyard runs on these trucks probably around like 2010, 2009, 2010. And at first I was just like, ooh, that looks neat, I'll buy that. Ooh, that looks neat, I'll buy that. And the next thing I know, I've got like just tons of valve covers. I was kind of acting like a preservationist here. You know, like, oh, you'll never find valve covers this clean again, you know. Next thing you know, you got a pile of valve covers, and you're like, I don't really have a need for these things anymore. But that's how I was seeing it. So, like, I've got drawers of switches, fuses, relays. I've got a ton of fusible links, battery cables, starters and alternators upstairs, speedometer clusters. I was buying speedometer clusters like they were going out of style. Now I've got tons of them that I've parted out to make different ones, which is pretty cool. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, you got to trick it out sometimes, because, you know, they did make minor updates over the years, but, you know, there's ways to make it work and everything like that. So, all right, well, we got 3 people in here right now, which is cool. That's good enough for me. Well, now we got 4. Excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start. So first off, I want to welcome everybody to the first live question and answer session that I've ever done. I've done some live videos before in the past, and I've taken some questions, but this is kind of be like more specifically you guys asking me questions and seeing if I can answer them for you to help you guys with your projects based on what I've done. My name is Devin. I am with Pounding Rocks Truck Shop. The name comes from the trucking industry, well, actually any industry really, but if you don't get the answer you want, someone's most likely going to tell you to go pound rocks. Like, oh, can I have $1 million? And someone's going to be like, oh, go pound rocks. It's kind of like go take a long walk off a short pier kind of thing. So I thought that was kind of funny, because I'm getting into building a 4-wheel drive truck versus these 2-wheel drive trucks, so I thought it was an appropriate name. We all know that this channel was named a different name before, but and I explained that in a previous video, that it was time to come up with a unique moniker that is a unique identifier for me. So this channel is covering 4 different trucks right now. The Pathfinder pickup project known as Double Dare XL, my green hard body, which is the autocross hard body, which is sitting behind me right here, which I didn't get a chance to wash, so it looks like dirty. I'm sorry. Next time I will take it out and get it dolled up, but I didn't really have a lot of time. I decided late in the game yesterday to do this, and so I didn't really have enough time to prep everything. I just kind of threw it all together. Patches, which is my burgundy purple hard body, which started out as my daily driver, and then it blew a head gasket, and I've been running the series on how to replace the head gasket and put, get the cylinder head serviced and everything like that. That project is nearing completion. I think all I got to do right now is bleed the brakes and put an exhaust, a makeshift exhaust on it, and that truck is back on the road, which is awesome. And then, of course, the sad, tragic story of LaRouge, the red hardbody that was in Roadkill magazine a bunch of years ago. That truck has now suffered a broken frame, so that truck is going to be slowly turned into a mud truck, another Pathfinder pickup, if you will. There. So, in terms of the shop, as I was saying earlier, the shop has now got lights and power. We're actually, the phone here is now plugged into the wall. I'm not running an extension cord from one building to another. That's I think that's a step out of the Stone Age and into modern times. So yeah, and now from there it's just going to be cleaning it up, organizing it, get all the decorations hung, and then it's get to the projects and everything. So we have a question here. How am I doing? I'm doing good. And aftermarket bumpers is the question on the interchange on the aftermarket bumpers. I'm sorry, that flipped by so fast I didn't get to see the rest of it. Okay, so aftermarket bumpers. That's a tough call. A 95 pretty much has, if it's an early 95, it's going to have a three-piece front bumper with the end cap separate from the center section. Most people want to have the one piece, so you go with the late 95, 96, 97 bumper and you get a one piece. And that gives you the latest, greatest bumper there. In terms of aftermarket bumpers, nobody's really making anything anymore for these trucks. Occasionally you can come across the lower air dam that you find that the old SCCA race trucks used to run. But I have not seen one locally that I've been able to purchase. I'd love to throw one on this truck, but for now I haven't found one that's affordable or anything like that. So, we got some people coming in and out here. Just wait for another question here, and in the meantime we'll just talk about the number one question that I am asked on this channel, which is it's interesting. Because it's not really, you would think that with what I'm building, people would be asking more technical questions, but the number one question that I'm asked on this channel, on any video that I've ever put out, is where can you buy the tonneau cover that I have on this truck right here? I've answered that question probably well over 100 times, easy. And yeah, it's hard to believe that a tonneau cover excites people as much as it does. I bought that tonneau probably back more than 10 years ago. How do you get more horsepower? Out of what engine? Out of a VG engine or out of a KA engine? I mean, the simple answer to that is turbo. Throw a turbo on it. If it's the 6-cylinder and the 3.0, supercharger, baby. That's all I can say. That's the way I like to go. I mean, you can turbo it. You can definitely turbo it, and you'll have good results. But you're very limited on space inside these compartments. So you have to be a fabricator. You have to be good with exhaust pipe. You have to have no problem, bashing the firewall in and cutting fender wells out. But if you have no problem doing that, then that's awesome. So go turbo if you can, because that's basically free power. Whereas the blower, it is a factory mount. You just if it's like a regular VG30E with the fuel injection, you're basically doing what I'm doing with the Pathfinder pickup. You're tricking the computer into just running it, and you might have to fine tune it by using, you might have to get one of those SAFCs, fuel control modules, and a wideband O2 to do some final tuning, which is probably what's going to happen to me. I'm kind of crossing my fingers that it'll run it good enough that I can daily drive it and not really care, because it'll run good enough, and I'm not trying to go for dyno numbers. I'm not trying to drag race it or anything like that. So I think it would be fine just running it slightly rich like they normally do. But if you're looking for, magazine numbers, or, get on a dyno, or, get on a track and try and rip it, you're definitely going to want to have a more external aftermarket tuning system on it. But the VG30, I personally, I'm a nuts and bolts kind of modifier. My welding is subpar at best. My exhaust systems are pretty redneck. So if I was to build a manifold, actually I have a turbo manifold for a KA sitting right behind this camera here that I bought a long time ago. It's just been sitting here frosting over with rust. Maybe someday throw the turbo on this. I also have another VG33 sitting right here, right in front of me, underneath the plastic bag. I started that project probably like 4 years ago. I stripped it down. I was actually going to make like a VG37 ER out of it. So I've got the block. I was going to punch the block out, so it was a 3.7 liter. I have the heads. I was going to just port and polish the heads, and I have a spare blower with the whole manifold setup and the injectors and everything. And I was going to just throw that all together, throw a timing belt on it, and bam, I've got my VG37 ER. Obviously, I'll have to get pistons and that. You know, as I said, this is just kind of an idea, you know, that I haven't completely and totally fleshed out yet. So, but all the parts are here. I even have a transmission. I have a drive shaft. I have a cross member. I even have a spare computer. I even have a spare wiring harness too. So if this engine and this turd decides to pop, we will do that. What is the biggest tire I can fit on? What is the four-wheel drive? The biggest tire you can fit on in a stock setting? That's like the most popular question that's asked on Facebook, man. And I would say in a stock capacity with no two-wheel drive, I've run 31s on a two-wheel drive. I have. That red truck, before I lowered it, the red truck had 31s on it for probably 2-3 months maybe. There's pictures of it on Instagram in stock height with 31s on it, and it could not turn. I had to do multi-point K-turns on it, and the other thing that it was the problem, well, it originally had 3.7 gears in the back because it was an automatic truck, and now it's got 437s in the rear because I swapped it in that H233B, so it could probably handle the 31s now with ease, but it definitely was not happy with the 3.7s, and I never got into fifth gear. I was in fourth gear all day, so I found that to be a waste. I ended up, the best tire configuration I think I ever had for the two-wheel drive truck that I absolutely loved, I had 275 60 15s on the rear, and I think I had 235 70 15s on the front. And there's pictures of that on Instagram as well. And it still had that 31 look to it, but it had more, because the 275s were so wide and just they had a little less sidewall. It rode great, and I thought it looked awesome. I really think it looked awesome. So I've always been a fan of bigger tires, especially, you know, like sporty or big tires. Of course, you know, I've got a set of 33s sitting in the barn over here that are going to go on the future mud truck and everything. So, but big tires are great. But a two-wheel drive, realistically, and if you didn't tell me if it was auto or if it was stick, but if it's auto, I still got 205 65 15s. That's a good size. I ran those on this truck for a long time. 205 65 15s. I got 215 60 15s on it now. 31s would be the biggest, but your turning radius is going to suck, and you're never going to get into a fifth gear. I think even with the 354 gears that a lot of the manual transmission trucks came with, you're still probably never going to use fifth gear. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I think you'll use fifth gear even less. So I'd be careful about that. I mean, the look is great, and they will fit, but your performance is going to suffer big time. Would you happen to know which energy suspension cab bushing kit is the closest to factory king cab, not worth buying at the junkyards? Is it a two-wheel drive or four-wheel drive? Because I'd have to go into the catalog, but I can tell you this much. You're going to want to go with the black set. The red bushings are beautiful, but the black ones have the graphite that are impregnated into it, so you'll have less chances of squeaking. But two-wheel drive, four-cylinder, I'd have to go into their catalog. I can answer that question. I don't have the catalog right in front of me, but it should be listed right in there if you go into the truck section. Um, but as long as they haven't discontinued it. But this truck's got them, the black bushings. The red truck's got the black bushings in it as well. So it was probably one of the best upgrades that I've done on one of these trucks was going to the poly bushings. It just the rubber bushings, they're a softer ride, but what happens is that the control arm, when it goes up and down, it's actually twisting the rubber and then springing back. Whereas the poly bushings, the actual articulation point can rotate. So the control arm has full articulation rotating, and I think that actually makes the truck a lot more compliant. Where it doesn't feel like it's binding. Whereas if you were to like really like say you were taking this to autocross and you're really like flogging it, the control arms after a certain point of movement are going to bind because the rubber's not going to twist anymore. It's just going to stop. And because the rubber, depending on whether it's an OEM or what the quality of the rubber is, that twist and bind is going to be inconsistent side to side, so it's not going to react the same either way. So I found that the poly bushings, because the control arms can now move without binding. Can I get your Instagram? The Instagram is Rainmaker, which is RAIN Maker, MAKER _D21. Yeah, there's a lot of good pictures and information on there. I'm kind of an Instagram whore when it comes to building the trucks. I'll post if I even turn one bolt, I'll post a picture of it like, hey, look what I did. I turned a bolt. Yeah, so the poly bushings I think are great, especially with the leaf springs. Everything seems to be way more compliant, smooth. I think that the weight transfer on the truck is a lot smoother because there is no bind. And so it's definitely a worthwhile upgrade for those trucks as well. And I use the KYB shocks. I like the monotube design. Monotube can take a lot more of a beating than I forget what the other one is. Double whatever it is. It's something else. It's not monotube. But monotube is a better design for more abuse. And so the gas adjusts are the ones that I have on the daily drivers. Like LaRouge had gas adjust front and rear, and Patches is getting LaRouge's old shocks because those shocks have no miles on them or very low miles, so I'm just gonna transfer them over. This truck here had gas adjusts for a while, and I did a bunch of autocrosses with them, and then after I took out the overload leaf, I switched to the Monomax shocks, which I'm a little disappointed. The Monomax shocks are not available for the Pathfinder. They are not. I wanted to put those all over Double Dare XL, and I can't get them. All I can get is gas adjusts. I'm disappointed. I tried crossing. I tried doing a whole bunch of things, and it wasn't possible. So, hey, I got a 91 Nissan pickup. I have done your normal tune-up, and it made it run better. But anyways, this is doing its cutting out when you push the gas. Cutting out while pushing the gas. That could be a whole bunch of things. You could have a mass airflow sensor that's not reading correctly. Or I'm sorry, that is possible. That would probably make it run rich or lean. But I'm thinking a throttle position sensor may be wigging out. I know that they have internal wipers, and eventually the resistor will wear out and there will be a dead spot in it. I see that more on the throttle body injected, like 6 cylinders. That's a very common thing. You'll be driving along and they'll just start bucking because it's losing contact right in there. It could also be your fuel filter. It could be an ejector that's going south. And worst case scenario, your fuel pump might be taking a dump on you. those are some things that you might want to look into and see. Um, yeah, if you might want to also check for codes. If it's, you know, you're gonna have to pull the passenger seat and put a little teeny screwdriver. You know, get like one of these little pocket screwdrivers here, and you're gonna have to turn the knob on the computer to get it to go into diagnostic mode. And then you're gonna have to count the red and green flashes on the LEDs that are on the ECM itself. And then that'll tell you what you gotta do there. Same symptoms I was having. 4-cylinder, I would have to say if it's bucking, yeah, it's definitely probably going to be, I would say, electrical for sure. You know, unless of course it is getting fuel starved. But still, if it's getting fuel starved because of the fuel pump, that still falls into the electrical category. So try that. I mean, weld the wires or use connectors. Oh, at this point, that's your personal choice. I mean, if it's just something that you just want to run, I would just, you know, cut out the connector and just hardwire it if you know you're never going to go back in there again. But if you're meticulous and you know that you might have to go back in there eventually, then I would leave the connectors intact. You can always go to the junkyard and get yourself a, you know, snip on both sides of the connector and then butt splice it in, and then you still have a functioning connector. But the terminals are, you know, as long as you get one that's in better shape, the terminals will might solve your problem too. It could be a, you know, a wore out connector. Who knows? I mean, the electrical gremlins that these things have. After, you know, how old is the last one that came off the line? 1997. So that's 24 years ago is the last time that Nissan squeezed one of these out for the American market. I know that they made them up until like 2008 or something for Brazil. For some reason, I don't know why they did that, but you know, I guess if you want a newer, you know, 2008 hard body, just to brag, you go to Brazil and drive one back up. So yeah, cool. Everybody enjoying this so far? I replaced the fuel filter and I got exhaust sensor. I think it is definitely electrical. This for the plug on the MAF things. Yeah, the mass airflow sensor, the thing that people do, and it's kind of unavoidable with the mass airflow sensor, and you have to, you know, repair it, is that there's a one shielded ground wire, and if the connector goes bad and you can't cut it to connect it, you gotta address the shielding on it. That's going to be one of the things I have to deal with on Double Dare XL is, you know, the mass airflow sensor. The wire connector was damaged by a previous owner, so I have to go in and address that. Yeah, so that's cool. Yeah, and that to touch back to the tonneau cover question, I'll answer this. This will be the last time I ever answer this question. That is, oh, I got another question here. I have an 87 VG30i two-wheel drive that sputters when I get gas and lately on it. I would look into the throttle position sensor. I would, if it's that seems to be like something that a lot of people, I'll tell you a story about how I figured out the throttle position sensor. I can drive it down the road, but no burnouts. Oh, you probably have a vacuum leak then. That sounds like you're getting like, you know, or the airflow sensor is not reading properly or whatever. But if it's acting like it's not getting fuel or it's bucking or whatever, the throttle, as I said just before, the throttle position sensor on the VG30Is is a wiper that runs on a circuit board that is a resistor. And when you're driving down the road, your foot's in the same spot if you're in cruise. And eventually that spot in that resistor will just wear a little hole in it, and then it'll lose contact, and all of a sudden the computer has no idea what's going on, so it wigs out. My dad had an 87 Pathfinder, two-door Pathfinder, cool truck, but he drove it totally into the ground. Otherwise I would have loved to have owned it. But he drove it into the ground. For a long time, it would buck randomly, and so many shops looked at it. Like one Nissan dealer scanned it, came up with nothing. One aftermarket Nissan shop down, a few miles from here that closed its doors a bunch of years ago, they actually did a full engine rebuild, and then when they pulled the the throttle body off, they had noticed that the intake heater grid had disintegrated and had been pulled into the cylinders and scored all the cylinders up. So they put a new throttle body heater on it, and then they also honed the block and replaced a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, this was going back like 25 years ago, before I even knew anything about what was going on. But when he got the truck back, he was still doing the exact same thing, and he just was like, it's a fact of life, I have to live with it. So in 1997, I was working for the Toyota dealer up in Rochester, New York, and they bought an old Nissan dealer, and with it came the technicians, all the Nissan service manuals, the service writer, just a plethora of information. And all of a sudden, I was excited. I was like, oh my God, I want to transfer from Toyota to Nissan. I gotta do this. This is awesome. And they didn't take me at the time because they kept me on the Toyota side. Eventually, I got over to the Nissan side, but it took a long time to get there. But I talked to their lead tech, who had been with Nissan since like when the Pathfinders first came out. I think he started with Nissan in like '86. He's like, I told him the symptoms, and he was like, wow, that's easy. That's a throttle position sensor, And at the time, those were like $35 from the dealer. So it was a cheap chance to take. So on a Saturday when I was working, doing, extra hours or whatever, I pulled my dad's truck in, I pulled the throttle position sensor off, put the new one on. I didn't even really adjust it or anything. Uh-oh. What's going on here? We lost contact. Hold on, guys. I don't know. I'm back. I am very sorry. That was, for some stupid reason, my email, if it warns me that I got more than one email, it shuts my phone off. So that won't happen again. But now I know at least I have 2 emails. So to make the long story short, sorry about this. Make the long story short, I replaced the throttle position sensor. I didn't really even pay attention to setting it properly. I think eventually I did, but I just got it on there. Drove it, and from the time that he got it back, and this was in '97, I gave it back to him. He drove it from '97 until 2005 when he traded it for an Xterra, and it never bucked again. He never had a problem with it again. So that was like, that nipped it in the bud. Of course, the truck, like all the Nissans up in my area, succumbed to rust very bad. So it was a sad day to see that thing get hauled away. So what other questions do we have? I can always tell more stories. I've got lots of funny stories that I can tell you guys. I could tell you one about the 4-wheel drive brakes swap that I did on Le Rouge, the red truck. That's a 2-wheel drive H233B axle out of a V6, a 1986 V6, so it was a VG30i. It was a 2-wheel drive, heavy-duty long bed. There's pictures of it on Instagram. It's white. I bought it as a parts truck. The guy was going to scrap it, and no problem. Yeah, look into the TPS sensor. That might solve your problem. You never know. It's worth it. If it's cheap enough, it's worth throwing on there. I'm sure that if it's the original one, it's got to be roasted by now. Okay, so I had that axle, and I ordered brake shoes for it. And originally, I ordered what I thought was the 2-wheel drive shoes. I was like, oh man! But I ended up ordering 4-wheel drive shoes by accident. So I had those, and I'm like, okay. I ended up ordering the 2-wheel drive shoes because, I wanted to do it right, but then I got my brain thinking. I was looking at the backing plates, and other than being wider, the 4-wheel drive backing plates looked exactly the same as the 2-wheel drive. So I'm like, ooh, here's a golden opportunity for me to upgrade the H233B 2-wheel drive to a 4-wheel drive brake setup. The other reason I was going to do this is because the 2-wheel drive drums for H233B, for some reason, were discontinued everywhere. And if I found a set listed, they were like 5 times the price of the 4-wheel drive drums. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. So I ordered the 4-wheel drive drums, and the only difference is that they're the exact same drums, but the actual brake surface inside the drum is machined further inward on the 4-wheel drive so it can accommodate the wider shoe. I'm like, well, that's just silly. Why would they charge 5 times more to machine it less? That's just ridiculous. Well, I got to make this 4-wheel drive setup work. I want to do that. So I started messing around with, looking at, a buddy of mine, Tony, down in Florida. He's got the fast software. I'll hit him up every once in a while to have him do research for me. And he sent me some schematics, and my parts lady up at the Nissan dealer up in the city here, she helped me out too. They would send me breakdowns with all the information on it, and I started looking at it, and I'm like, the only difference besides the width of the shoes and the machining on the drum, the hardware is the same. The only difference is the actual anchor at the top of the backing plate. The anchor has a longer pin on the 4-wheel drive than the 2-wheel drive, because obviously the shoe sits further out because of the width of the shoe itself, so the anchor actually sits further out. So all I had to do to make it work was get 4-wheel drive anchors, pull the 2-wheel drive anchors off, mount the 4-wheel drive anchors on, and bam, 4-wheel drive shoes on a 2-wheel drive axle. I was like, yeah, man. And you get like 10 inches more square footage of braking surface by doing this. So I was like, win-win, I guess. So I put out, on my Facebook page and on my Instagram page, I said, if anybody sees a 1987 and to 1989 4-wheel drive V6, can you guys get these anchors? And people all over the country were looking, and the brake system was really specific. So every time they found one, it was the newer brake system, not the old brake system, so that it didn't have them. So happens that a truck in the junkyard, maybe about 30 minutes from here, had an 86 in there. There's pictures of it on Instagram. In the middle of winter, with snow on the ground, using only a scissor jack and a piece of deck lid, I jacked this truck up, took the wheels off, climbed underneath it, broke the bolts loose to get the anchors off, and did it for both sides while it was, starting to snow and everything like that. And I felt like that was like a major achievement. I brought it back to my buddy Justin's shop where the truck was being held at that time when I was working on it there, and they bolted right in. The 4-wheel drive shoes went on, the anchor pins went in, the return springs went on, and that truck from that day forward had 4-wheel drive rear brakes on a 2-wheel drive H233B axle. I gotta practice saying that. I don't know. It's late in the day, had a long day. So, all right. So that's an interesting, fun story of doing things there. I will tell you that I'm just going to randomly blab, I guess. A 240SX cylinder head is exactly the same as the D21 cylinder head. I can tell you that much, because I got one from the junkyard, had it rebuilt, and it's on the Patch's hard body. Not a single difference at all. The only thing that's different on those is the camshaft profile. We got a question here. That's funny that you mentioned 4-wheel drive brakes. I found out 4-wheel drive brakes in the front after you come in. Yes. The V6 brakes between the 2-wheel drive and the 4-wheel drive are basically the same calipers. So you can get away with that. I think that the 4-cylinder 4-wheel drives are also the same calipers. If they're the twin piston calipers, they should all pretty much be the same. This truck has V6 calipers on it. It's got the V6 rotors, and it's got carbon metallic pads. It's got the performance friction pads. I love those pads, but Performance Friction discontinued them, and so I wasn't able to get them for Double Dare. I'm actually kind of disappointed because the company told me that they had a last box of these Performance Friction carbon pads, and I was like, ooh, ship it to me. I don't care how much it costs. And they shipped me regular ceramic pads that had the same part number, and I'm like, dude, I'm not into ceramic pads. I can tell you why. Ceramic pads, to me, ceramic is what you use for your light bulbs. Like, they're heat insulators, like for your light bulb stands and all that stuff. So they trap heat. And every car I've ever driven that had ceramic pads on it, it just tears the rotors to bits. It does. After a while, you always have pulsating brakes. I did the brakes on this. I swapped it over probably 4 or 5 years ago. I went to the V6 brakes. And I've taken it to a few different autocrosses, and I put some miles on this thing, and it stops awesome. It doesn't pulsate. I haven't had any pulsating problems. As a matter of fact, the carbon metallic pads that I had on this truck when it still had 4-cylinder brakes are on Le Rouge, the red truck. They were so not used that I took them off of this truck and put them on the red truck when I was redoing the whole front end on it. So the original calipers from this truck and the original carbon metallic pads from this truck, with multiple autocrosses on them, by the way, are on the red truck, and they still, well, you know, Lord save the red truck. If it was still running and still able to be street legal, it would probably still have great brakes. But Lord Rust came to claim another victim, and nobody survives Lord Rust around here. So, what kind of stuff are you guys building these days? You know, leave a comment down below. I'd like to see what you guys are building and everything, and hopefully some of the stuff that I've shared on the channel over the years has been inspiring and helpful. Most of it has been hard-headed learning. Most of it has been taking it apart 3-4 times to figure out how it works, and then actually make it happen. I'm so like, when I get close to the end of a project, or close to actually starting a project, I get really nervous. Almost like a nostalgic nervous in a way, like, oh, the project's coming to an end, what am I going to do next? And also a combination of, I feel like I missed something. I really do. I feel like maybe there's a missing bolt. What if this didn't work out? What if my calculations were wrong? What if this gas gets blown out? What if it doesn't start? What if it starts and it's making a whole racket of noise and I have to take it apart? So I get scared, and I'm getting scared about, you know, actually being this close to firing up Double Dare. It is that truck. I would love to set a goal for myself to have it running in the next, like, 2-3 weeks. I'm at the mercy of the companies that are going to sell me like battery cable and stuff like that. Time. I'm on the road all the time now, so like getting some of these shops is kind of tough because some of them aren't open on weekends, and I'm never available during the weeks. But the plan for that truck is a rear mount battery. I talked about that in the last video. Going to do a rear mount battery on the flatbed with a 150 amp flip out breaker. So that's going to be located somewhere underneath the truck. It's actually going to kind of double as a security device too, because all I got to do is hit the test button and it'll pop out the breaker, and the truck's dead. You can't go anywhere. But it's going to go a short piece of battery cable from the actual terminal of the battery down to the bed, mount to that 150 amp breaker, and then from there that's going to go straight to the starter. And then I have a breakout box that allows me to run 5 or 6 circuits off of one power wire. So I am going to run a 4-gauge wire straight from the battery all the way to the front of the truck, fused obviously, but it's going to go to this fuse block, and then from there all the fusible links are going to be connected to that using spade terminals. So the fusible links will be fused, and that should allow me to crank it. I can put the key in the ignition and crank the engine over using the starter. And then after that, it's just a matter of fine-tuning the fuel lines, doing the final connection on the fuel lines with the clamps, and then just powering the fuel pump. I'll put 12 volts to the fuel pump. She should start. It should run. It may not run great at first, but it'll fire up. It'll have air, fuel. It'll have power, spark and ignition. She should run. She should run great. So yeah, there's that. All right. So if anyone's got any more questions, now's the time because I'm starting to feel my old age here, and I'm probably gonna bag it in here. One other story I can tell you guys, and it's how this whole thing started. Um, I used to have. I started out in an '84 Sentra wagon. I love that car, but I wanted a truck, so I traded that car and I got an '81 Datsun 720. It was a King Cab ST. Somebody had painted. It had been painted like 5 times, but it was flat black by the time I got it. I stupidly sold that truck due to the fact that I wasn't, I didn't have my own place. My parents wanted it out of the barn, and I was driving my Altima all the time, and I, didn't ever see myself getting on the truck again there. So,
Do you have a recommendation as far as ball joints in these trucks, like bushings, ball joints?
I used Moog on this truck and that truck and the red truck. The heavy duty Moog stuff, not the quick steer or whatever the cheap brand is. Don't get the cheap brand. The actual Moog heavy duty stuff is the way to do it. If you're gonna do the ball joints, do the tie rod ends, the center link, and the idler arm too. It's night and day. It's absolutely night and day. That red truck was just so awesome after I did that, and I'm gonna save all those pieces before I scrap that truck. I'm gonna take all that stuff off and put it in the shelf there because someday I might have to do it again on this one, or patches might need it. To get back on the point about the Datsun, so I got rid of the Datsun and I've regretted it ever since. I have a piece of it though. I saved a piece of it, and it's going to be a decoration. I saved the Datsun logo off the tailgate. That's going to be a decoration in there. But I've always regretted getting rid of that truck. 620s are my favorite. I think the 620 is an absolute beautiful truck. It is gorgeous. I mean, there's not a bad angle on that truck. I can't afford it. That's the only angle the only bad angle. I can't afford one now. I mean, if I want to buy a roached out one for like $6,000 and then pay to have it shipped here and then be out $7,500 on something that's going to have holes in it and is going to need a lot of work, it's not really worth it to me. This truck here is all paid off. So they didn't really change a whole lot from the 620 to this truck. The frame rails got spaced out a little further, truck got bigger, but the main principle of the truck was the same. It was still torsion bar suspension, upper lower control arms, underslung rear axle, the whole nine, regular cab, like little scooter truck, the little hustler idea. And so I had a bad smoking habit. That I started when I was in my teens, and when I got to be 30, actually, no, I take that back. When I was 31, I quit. I quit smoking, done. I did the numbers, I ran the numbers, and I said, you know what, I can save this amount of money, and this is back in 2007, by the way, so I can save this amount of money if I quit smoking now. So I did that. I quit smoking, I saved every penny for a whole year, and that is how this truck came to be. This is my reward for quitting smoking cigarettes, and I haven't smoked a cigarette since 2007. That was my last one. But I've had this since 2008, so I've had this truck for 13 years, which is awesome, and I plan to keep it for a long, long time. The only thing that would get this truck out of my possession would is if somebody stopped by with a really nice 620 and said, would you like to trade? And I would be like, okay. But I know that this is not worth what a 620 is worth yet. And the numbers for these trucks are getting silly. Anyways, if you want a piece of crap you're paying $3,500 for a piece of crap. This thing is not the best, but it is definitely not a piece of crap. So, and the amount of work that I've done to it and stuff with the body work that from the collision and all the suspension work and everything, I'd never get my money back out of this thing. I've done, I was stupid and invested too much money in it, but it's mine. I own it. I can look at it every day. I can sit in it. I can drive it, and it's unique to this area because nobody else has got them around here. They all rotted away, and people are, have fond memories. They're like, oh yeah, I grew up, we had one on the farm. Oh, my dad had one. My grandfather had one. So they all like it. But if I put a for sale sign on it today, everybody would laugh me out of here because they'd be like, you're not getting that out of a truck. I'd be like, well, I'm trying to break even. But that's how this truck came to be, was quitting smoking cigarettes, which was the best thing I ever did. I put on 25 pounds, but I was able to walk long distances again, and now I can drive my green hard body wherever I feel like, whenever I feel like. So, all right, guys and gals and whoever else is in here, I want to thank everybody for stopping by. I hope everybody enjoyed this. I'd like to do this again. It's kind of like a nice little fireside chat here. We can talk about whatever and whatnot on these trucks. It's fun. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do with them. I think that's what I like the best about it, is that there's so many different possibilities of what someone can build with one of these things. You can, take a two-wheel drive, raise it up, make it a pre-runner. You can take a four-wheel drive, and like we did with the Rallycross truck, cut it in half, Z the frames, flip the control arms upside down for a 3-inch drop, and have a slammed four-wheel drive.
That's awesome, man. This is the best way to get a hold of CY. His Nissan inline fit under a hard body mount. The inline 6,
like an RB. I've seen them in there. I've seen pictures of them in there. I think that if you're crafty enough, you could probably make it work. You're gonna have to probably modify.
Oh, hold of me. You got to get a hold of me.
Best way to get a hold of me is either through YouTube messaging me, or go on Instagram and find Rainmaker _D21 and send me a message. I respond to all those. But to get back to the RB engine, yeah, you're probably going to have to mess with the core support. You might even have to get out a hammer and bash the firewall in a little bit. But if you are going that route, that shouldn't bother you. I mean, I'm sure that, if your fabrication skills are good enough, you could even make a custom firewall. Like, you could even cut a section out of the firewall, space it back, and then make a filler panel. And then, if you're really good at blending it all in, it'll look factory, So I think that would be, a pretty badass thing. I always thought about taking a Datsun 620 and putting a 280ZX turbo motor in it, but I never had, at that time when those things were cheap and they were around. I mean, when I lived in one city, I was going to college. There was a Datsun 521 right down the street from my house for a long time before I even noticed what it was. $350 he wanted for it. I was like, but I was a broke college student, and plus, where was I going to keep a 521? I mean, if I saw that kind of shit on the road now, like I'm a outside rep. I work for in agriculture now. I sell combine parts and stuff as opposed to big truck parts. I've driven around. I've put just this month alone. Well, I'm sorry, just July alone. I drove 4,000 miles in July, and I looked and I looked and I looked and I'm looking and I'm driving around, just cruising around, looking in people's backyard. What do you got there? What do you got there? What do you got? I've seen more Toyotas than I can shake a stick at. I've seen some awesome Toyotas and everything in people's backyards. I've seen some crazy shit too. The other day, I gotta get a picture of it. I think I found an old leaf spring monster truck just sitting up north of where I live by maybe like an hour north, and it's like a step side 70s Ford. My jaw hit the floor. I was like, what? Monster trucks. I was like, that's awesome. I've seen a monster truck Subaru Legacy. It's still being built, but it blew me away. I'm like, what the hell? But I haven't seen any single Datsuns. I've seen one 280ZX. Or no, it was a 280Z. And I'm not really a Z car guy. I'm sorry. They're cool. They're awesome. They're just not what I'm into. I mean, my jaw would hit the floor if I was driving down the road and I saw like a Datsun 710. I'd be like, what? You know, I'd chase the guy. You know, Datsun Roadster, that's cool to me. If I saw a 610, I'd probably try and buy it off them because I grew up in a 610. My parents had a 610 and a 210 when I was a kid, so that's where my Datsun thing came from. Was from that. I haven't seen any. I've seen 4 hard body trucks, and this is 3 months of driving 3,000 or 3,000, 4,000 miles a month. I've seen 4 hard body trucks. That's it. And the only Datsuns I've come across were in a junkyard, and it was a Datsun 200SX, one of the crazy ones from the late 70s. Those things are awesome. But the sad part is that if I bought the car and we went to go lift it off the ground, it would probably just crumble. I would love to have it as a yard decoration or something, have the Datsun here, but not going to happen. This New York weather is just, you know, and if you leave them sitting in a field like for as long as that one probably has, it's never going to happen there. But yeah, I would love to run. The last Datsun that I saw, Datsun truck that I've seen driven, you know, and like without being a custom job, like what the shop that I hung out at, Ryder Restorations up in East Rochester, they have a whole collection of Datsun 620s. Like they have the Land Speed Record one that does the Ohio Mile. They got the Gasser one that says Little Hustler on the side of it. They had a green one that had Ryder Restorations on the side of it, and then they had that red one with the Chevy 350 and the Tronic 6-speed or 5-speed in it and everything. They had those. Those are the last in-person 620s that I've seen, but they were all custom. I have not seen a living, breathing, in the wild Datsun pickup since probably the late 90s. There was a white, and I remember it because those are the things that I remember in my life. It was a 720. It was a 2-wheel drive, regular cab, white 720, and the reason I noticed it was because I was driving my 81 black King Cab 720, and I was probably just behind it on the expressway. We were probably doing a top speed of 65 miles an hour and bouncing off the rev limiters together. But I have not seen a 720 or a 620 in person in who knows how long. I really don't. They just don't exist around here. Occasionally a hard body goes by. I mean, Frontiers, the first generation Frontiers are starting to disappear too. I saw a regular cab, first gen, early like 98 to 2000, regular cab 2-wheel drive. Frontier going down the expressway the other day, and I thought that was pretty cool. My problem with those trucks is every single one of them that I see is column shift automatic, and it just automatically I can't do it. I can't. That red truck was a column shift automatic when I first bought it, and the first thing it decided to do was blow up. And luckily, the way the waves were going for me at that point, I was able to find a transmission, find a drive shaft, find all the pieces that I needed to be able to swap that out. And I started that in my driveway. I was living at the old house at the old, we won't name the channel, the old channel name, the old garage. If you go back almost 3 years now, you'll see all the projects were in a different facility. I started that out, and I finished that over at my buddy Justin's house because we towed it over there, and I could work indoors all winter. And it was, take off the flex plate, get out the bushing, put in the new pilot bushing. I turned my own flywheel, put that on there. The clutch, pressure plate, transmission, cross member, slave cylinder, pressure hose. Make a line. Actually, I think I actually ordered an OEM clutch line for that truck when they were still available. I think I did. I gave it an OEM look on that one. All those lines were put. Now I use the Cooper nickel line because I really don't. I don't pop the hood for, to show things off. It's usually pretty ugly under there. But that truck actually used a factory line, I think. And then it was just a matter of, and then it was done. I jumpered the inhibitor relay. It started up. It's running. That truck still runs now, even though it's like half gone. And for 6 years, I ran it off of an automatic ECM. So an automatic ECM jumper will run a 5-speed standard all day long with no problems. I never had a problem. That truck fired up every second. It'll fire up right now if I put a battery in it. I guarantee it. That's how good that motor and that setup was. But that's why I have hard bodies. I can't afford 620s. I can't afford 521s. I can't afford 520s. Even 720s are starting to get out of my reach there. I don't want to pay, 4 or 5 grand for something that's going to need everything that this truck needed. And I know that the workload is kind of crappy, especially when you get into doing like lower control arm bushings and stuff like that. That's a lot of work. It's worth it, but it's a lot of work, and I'm really I don't know. I'm not feeling like doing that again. I'm sure Double Dare is going to need it eventually, and I think that rather than actually do the control arm bushings on Double Dare, I think I'll do an SAS swap on it before then, or pay somebody to do an SAS swap on it eventually. Take it to a whole new level. But yeah, they're good trucks. They're unique. I enjoy taking it out. I enjoy going and getting ice cream in it. Occasionally, yeah. I mean, when using them as a work truck, they're badass. The red truck brought every toolbox that's in this shop here. All the cabinets, all my parts, engines, transmissions. It hauled them all. So, yeah, I'll continue to work on it. I'm looking forward to bringing you guys more updates. But to keep the channel fresh and interesting, I figure I'd just sit down and have a nice little fireside chat with you guys. I really appreciate all the support that I've gotten, and it keeps me going. And yeah, now that I've got power in this barn, I've got lights, I've got outlets. Let's get working. Let's build something. Let's keep. I want Double Dare running soon. I'm not going to give myself a date because I don't know how that's going to work, but sooner rather than later. And then I'll bring it here, and it'll be inside the shop side by side with Greenie here, and it'll just be awesome to sit in here in my chair, in my old man chair, drinking my old man coffee, going, look what I've done.
You're like, I hate to ask you as many questions. What recommendations would you suggest to make my hard body an awesome daily driver?
An awesome daily driver? I would go back and watch my the whole series that I did on building a fun street truck using junkyard parts. I think that you'll find some really cool stuff in that series. It's like 40 episodes long, but it starts from bringing the truck in, doing the whole suspension, but I talk about everything else that I did to it. I mean, I had the roll bar, the light bars, I had a nice stereo in it, I had nice seats in it.
What's the paint code for the truck behind it?
This is an FN4, this is Vivid Teal. So yeah, CB radio. Jeez, what else did I do? I painted the dash, did the suspension, did the brakes, did the tires, did the shocks, lowered it 3 inches in the rear. I lowered it, yeah, the whole thing had to be lowered. I kind of eyeballed everything there. Yeah, I don't know. I just took that truck and I was inspired by all the mini trucks from the 70s. I thought those were cool because they had the big rear wheels, the smaller front tires, and they have a little bit of a rake to the front, and then they'd always have a light bar with a big old antenna coming off of it, and KC light covers and all that stuff. And I thought the 70s mini trucking thing was just totally, it trickled over into the early 80s before it became the slammed lowrider movement, which I like that too, which I'm always on the fence. I'm like, do I take this and lower it even more? Because I think it would be totally, I do want to lower the rear more on this, but I think this would be totally badass to have there's just so many clean low riding hard bodies on YouTube that I'm always just like, if only I had the balls to do that to this truck, you know. But they're beautiful when they're lowered and done right, you know, done right. I mean, done cheaply and haphazardly, they look dangerous and they look bad. But there's a lot of clean ones out there that I'm just like, believe me, guys, if you're tuned into this channel and you got a nice hard body, believe me, I've watched it on YouTube and my jaws hit the floor at how beautiful it is. You know, they look good in white. The wheel choices are unbelievable. They're just beautiful trucks, and you know, you guys do a beautiful job, you know, capturing them at night, driving, you know, through tunnels and driving over bridges and city lights going over them and all. I'm just like, oh man, you know, I just, as an old man, I don't have the balls to do what you guys did today. I'll give this one just a little bit more of a drop, just a little bit, but after that, I got to be able to get back out of it. Remember, I'm only a few years away from having a walker, you know. And a cane, so I don't want to like hurt myself. I drive a Subaru Impreza every day as a daily driver, and even that's too low for me. I feel like, oh man, I gotta get out. Oh, where's my cane? So yeah, not too low on this thing, and you know, I want it to still be sporty. You know, I haven't done it in a couple of years. COVID was a major catastrophe last year that put the brakes on autocrossing. This year I've been focused on other things, so I didn't do any autocrossing this year. So, but if I do get the rear end lowered a little bit on this, the other plan was I do want to reload. I do want to move the battery to the back of the truck. I think getting the 25 pounds of battery off the front of the truck and putting it in the back is definitely going to make a huge difference in the way it articulates, how quickly it transfers the weight, how it takes a set, and all that. Because the biggest problem with these trucks is they push through a turn. Yeah, they will push through a turn. So you'll have the wheels turned, and she just wants to keep going straight. And you know, autocrossing is not drifting, so you're not gonna, you know, you're already in gear. So you're not going to try and drop it into first and try and drift around the corner. I mean, you can, I guess, but, you know, with the lack of power and the lack of enthusiasm that these KA motors have, you're not really going to pop a drift, you know, that easily, I guess. I mean, at least not this guy. This guy is kind of this guy is as moody and old as I am. So we're just two peas in a pod here. We enjoy going to get ice cream and coming back. We enjoy driving and looking.
What are you trying to do? Wind the whole fucking neighborhood?
My neighbor's joining us. We're doing a live video here on YouTube. I got some viewers here, and we're just talking trucks. This is he's off camera. This is Paul, everybody.
All right,
you can see his hand. Paul's responsible for the lights in here, and he's accusing me of blinding the whole neighborhood, which I pretty much am. So.
I'm just fucking with you.
Oh, that's all good. They just say, hey, Paul. Paul is never without a cigarette and a beer in his hand, and I have to say I commend him on that. I mean, you gotta, you know, you do what you love.
Yep.
So, I was just telling him the stories of this truck and how it's an ice cream getter now. It used to be a race truck, but now it's an ice cream getter.
Still a nice truck.
It is. I enjoy it. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to sit in here and actually, do stuff after hours.
Be able to see.
Yeah, I mean, shit, can I see? I didn't know what this toolbox over here is black, so it's hard to know what the hell's going on. That's why I have everything painted in white, so I know what the hell I was grabbing or whatever. But now I can see how awful this corner over here looks. So now I gotta like revamp this whole thing, and I'm not gonna do it on a weekday. I'm just too beat to do that or whatever. But, yeah, these guys have got some good questions and stuff. You know, doing technical questions on these things, so that's cool.
That's cool.
I don't know where everybody's from. Where's everybody from? So tell me where you're from. That'd be cool. I'd like to know. We got any people from outside the good old US of A, USNA? You know, we're up here in. I'm not gonna say exactly where, but we are near Canandaigua, New York, which is the chosen spot.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I don't want to have any stalkers come over. But it says we're from. I got Massachusetts, and they've got just as much rust as we do.
And there you go.
Yeah, that's cool. So yeah, this is fun. I just dreamed this up the other day. I was just like, yeah, I should just do a live thing here. Yeah. We'll do a live thing and just, touch base with everybody and just show them the shop.
Nothing wrong with that.
Just talk to them.
I haven't been to Mass yet, but I'm going one of these days with the camper.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I've been to Boston a bunch of times. I've been, my dad was a big Red Sox fan, so every year we'd go and see the Red Sox play. And I've seen the Oakland A's, I've seen the Yankees, I've seen the Braves, I've seen the Blue Jays, all that stuff there right in Fenway. And then we would go to Toronto a lot to go see the Sox up there. So.
Closest I got was Connecticut when we built that timber frame.
Well, that's cool. So Massachusetts is the only place you're from? Where's everybody else from? I can tell you, I was originally from Rochester, New York, but I've been transplanted.
North Carolina. All right.
Hey, nothing wrong with that one.
That's cool. Awesome. That's awesome.
North Carolina,
Thanks for stopping
South Carolina, any of them.
in. Yeah. I haven't been to North Carolina yet, but I hear you guys got some of the best weather down there, so I was kind of thinking about it. I'm a little disappointed that California is kind of going the way it is because I was going to go and do
Dallas.
cool.
I
Very
lived
cool.
down there.
Yeah. Very cool. Welcome.
3 years.
Thanks for stopping in. I appreciate that. That's awesome. Yeah. I think ultimately, and this is just a pipe dream or whatever, but I would love to end up in like Utah or Arizona because the Utah's got some great scenery from what I've seen. Like I watch Dirt every day and all that, so like seeing them go out and do the off-roading thing out there is awesome. And then I would be close to California, so I could sneak across the border and go to some of these awesome, like, Japanese classic car shows and stuff like that, which don't happen around here. And then sneak back, and so I don't have to like stay in California or anything. I can be like, oh, just visiting, and then go back. But we used to have a Japanese classic car show, but then they changed it to just Motor Fest, and then it's like everything. It just turns into a bunch of hot rods, and all the imports get pushed to the back. So when I would pull up in this thing, they'd be like, go to the back. And I'd be like, oh, well, I thought this was, put on by the Z Car Club here, but apparently it's just the hot rod. So, don't get me wrong, I love hot rods, but I'm an import guy. I have been, and I really like them. I would have a hot rod in a heartbeat. I mean, I would have a 57, 58 Plymouth Fury.
Oh, yeah.
I would eat one of those up. Even a 70s Plymouth Fury would be like totally awesome, like a four-door boat Fury.
That was
that'd be
my
awesome.
brother's car.
Yeah, those are cool. I would do a Hudson. I would do a Hudson Terraplane. I would do, for some reason I'm into Nashes. I would do a Nash. We're back. Sorry. So, yeah. Nice. I would do, what else would I would do? American cars. I'm trying to think of what American cars I would do. I like the turbo Thunderbirds from like the mid '80s.
Yeah.
Like I
69
like
Charger with a 426.
Chargers are cool. There's a junkyard just like an hour and a half south from here. It's got two Chargers sitting in it. They're not in very good shape, but one's got the big block in it. I was like, that's pretty cool. I saw a Satellite today. I was driving down. Those are cool cars.
That was one of my wife's first cars.
Yeah, it was like a 68 or 69 Satellite, and I was like, that is pretty cool. Yeah. Justin just got a 59 T-Bird. He sold that already, but that's an ugly car.
I seen a 62 today.
Yeah, those are cool. Well, yeah, the 59. If they had made the 59 T-Bird a four-door, I think it would have looked a lot better.
Yeah.
It does not. It looks like somebody like just smushed its butt in, and then,
Yeah.
but it looked badass as a sedan.
I like the 69 Cougars, Mercury's.
Yeah, the 69, 70 Cougar and 69, 70 Mustangs. Those are the best looking Mustangs, I think.
Mm-hmm.
At least in my opinion. That's my opinion. My opinion. Just like, I just certain cars that just people like don't like and I like. I guess I'm like on the flip side of things, like people think that like a certain car is like, oh, that's butt ugly, and then I'm like, well, I think that looks great. And other ones are like, yeah, I think that car looked great. And I'm like, not for me, man. Not for me. And the other one, here's the cardinal sin. This one's going to get all the thumbs down. I'm not into Corvettes.
No.
Corvettes are cool cars. They're very nice looking cars. But the Corvette to me, and this is really going to get a lot of thumbs down. The Corvette to me, and everyone's going to say, well, you just don't own one, you wouldn't know a car, blah, 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 look what you drive, it's slow and everything like that. I'm like, the Corvette is for somebody who, this is just going to get me so many thumbs. It's almost like entry-level car. It's like if you didn't know what was interesting, you know, if you wouldn't go and get an interesting car, you're like, I want a car, I want a cool car, I want a fast car, and then you just automatically fall into a vet because that's like the car. That's the only car that everybody knows, or a Camaro. But I like the Camaro. I think the Camaro is not a bad looking car.
68, 69 Chevelle with 396.
Yeah, it's Chevelle SS. Those are cool cars. Oh man, but I would just go down and do the trucks. I'm just a truck guy. I would even get a medium duty. I'd get like a Ford F800 from like '68. Just drive that around. You know? I would do something ridiculous like that. International KB1. Those are cool. I would do something
I
like that.
had one International 68.
Truck.
Yeah.
Those are cool. There's one. There's like a '70s one that's up the road if you're heading up into town or whatever. Yeah,
And
it's like-
64 Ford.
Those are cool. I like the 70. A 70 Ford F100. I think those are great. There's a guy on the other side of the lake. He's got a long
Got a
bed.
couple of them actually.
Long bed, badass. I like long beds too, by the way. And short beds to me just they're cool, but the short beds just look like they forgot to draw out the rest of the truck.
Yep.
You know, like I think that some of them just don't look good. Like the 454 SS Chevy, I think is a great looking truck. You know, for a short bed. But if I got my own, if I had another Chevy again, like my black Chevy I had a few years ago, I'd get another long bed. They're just way more useful. Oh man, what else did I do? I would do a Dodge, any 70s Dodge.
Yeah.
I like those. Those are cool.
I'll buy a new one.
No, I won't do a new one, but a 70s Dodge is cool. Oh, what else? I'm trying to think of like truck-wise and stuff. Yeah, the Fords, jeez, like the trucks, all the trucks from like the 60s and 70s are cool to me. You know, I think that this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but like the early 60s Chevys to like 67,
67, 68.
it's like up to 67, they're ugly. When they got to the C10 models, like from 68 to 72, those look good. I like those, and I like the square bodies. So I like the early square bodies. The 80s square body grills don't do anything for me. So. Boy, am I a fickle car guy, aren't I? That's why I ended up with one of these, because one, I can't afford anything, and two, I don't like anything. All right, we've gotten way off track, so I'm sorry.
I'm out of here, so
Yeah,
I'll let you keep going.
You got it, man. Thanks for stopping by. That's
Yeah, no
Paul,
problem.
everybody. If you need electrical work done anywhere in the country, he's the guy to call. 'Cause that guy, he does a bang-up job.
I just had to come and bust your ass.
Yeah, it's great to see you, bud. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Boy, he's a great guy. He helped me out a lot. Like my hot water heater took a shit last week, and he put the hot water heater in, and then he ran all the electric here, and he likes the dogs. The dogs are inside the house, because I know that I would never be able to do this video with the dogs in here. They'd be fighting over something and knocking the camera over and just whatever, you know. All right, anyone got any more questions? Because I've gotten way off track here on this one. It's terrible. I'm meandering badly. Oh, here's what I'll do. I'm going to tell you what the best tools are to work on a hard bike. Like say, all right, here's for example, I'm going to the junkyard. I don't know what I'm going to find, but I want to make sure that if I find it, I want to be able to pull it. So this is what I would put in my tool bag, knowing that I'm looking for one of these things. Okay, obviously I would start with one of these pocket screwdrivers. These things are invaluable. Not only do they undo connectors, they can pop gentle items out, and this is there's endless uses for one of these things. The next would be obviously the elusive and most valuable 10 millimeter socket. I usually bring a 3/8 10 millimeter and a quarter drive 10 millimeter with me, because quarter drive allows me to get into smaller things, like if I'm underneath a dash or something like that, you know. So, and then also a deep and shallow 12 millimeter socket, deep and shallow 10 millimeter socket, deep and shallow 12. Not so much, you know, I'll bring a shallow 14 with me. You know, I'll bring like all the ones like, you know, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 in 3/8. And then I'll bring 17 and 19 in half if I know I'm going to like pull a steering wheel, or if I'm going to pull something like really, really big, which isn't really happening much these days. But I would still bring a 17 and a 19 millimeter with a half drive on. Obviously, a couple short and long extensions. That would take care of your sockets, because Nissans really are all 10 and 12 millimeter. I mean, you can take a whole engine apart basically with a 10 and 12 millimeter. You also, I'll bring like hex head, like the keyway. Now we're really going off kilter here. So like these hex heads here, like something like that, but in socket form. Because if you're pulling a cylinder head, they're gonna do that.
How about the reset? Rarest parts scored in the junkyard.
The rarest parts? Ooh, that's a really good question. That is a very good question. Rare parts was a factory radio delete plate, because the truck never had a radio to begin with, and nobody took it out and put a radio in the truck. The truck had no radio. And as a result, the radio antenna delete plate was still in place, which is on my red truck. It goes right where the antenna is, and it just screws down, and it just fills the hole. I think that was one of the rare item there. Let's see. That would have to be the rarest thing that I can think of. Oh, and I'm going back to get the rest of it, but I did come across an ST Datsun ST steering wheel, the aluminum steering wheel. I got to go back and get the rest of it, but I did get the center cap off of that. That was kind of rare there. What else did I find? Well, the roll bar. Obviously, everybody wants to buy the roll bar off of me. I get questioned all the time. How much do you want to sell a roll bar for me? It's not technically a roll bar, it's a light bar. I bought that at the junkyard. That's actually was in a spectacular shape. Wow. That's a really good question. I really have to put my pen to my paper on that one and say that's the rare find. What I guess finding the superchargers with all the fixings, including the pulleys and all that, that's kind of a cool rare find. Because if you go on eBay and try and buy them, they're stupid. They're like, you know, anywhere between $600 to $1,000 for that setup. I've got a complete setup sitting over on the bench over here for this future 3.7 build. I bought it because it was there. I was like, I can't pass this up. I gotta have this thing. Oh, the rarest. Oh yeah, I'll show you. This was a cool find. Hang on, let me get this for you. I got, sitting in the junkyard, a complete KA-24 Weapon R cold air or warm air intake, hot air intake, the whole nine. Yeah, that was fun. That was just sitting there, and I was like, whoa, I know what that is. That's coming home with me. That was pretty
So yeah, but I think the radio delete plate, the antenna delete plate, the weapon R, and the supercharger would be the most exciting finds that I've had. I mean, there's this SC trim that's sitting right here. This is off a Nissan ST pickup. I put this here to make my shop look a little more festive, by the way. San Diego, California. Welcome. Welcome. It's awesome. You guys are all over the place. That's awesome. I really appreciate you all tuning in. This is great. It's like it's like a fireside chat. I didn't know how this was going to go, but now I'm like totally into this because I can just sit around and just blab Nissan stuff or whatever. Let's see. What else did I find that's pretty cool? Oh, yeah. This is cool. You can take Nissan Pathfinder parking brake setup. Will connect. There's the mounting holes are already in place on the floorboard of your two-wheel drive hard body cab, whether it's regular cab or sorry, now I'm really getting comfortable with you guys. Yeah, all you gotta do is open up the floor a little bit so the cable can go out, and you can get that to work with your two-wheel drive setup. So you drift guys, if you wanna look like you got, how does the rear connection go? It's like a U-shaped plate. The rear cable goes around that U-shaped plate, and then there's the bolt that goes through it, and then it's got it's like a nut that goes right through there. It is the right length because it's adjustable. There's actually a lot of thread on that. With the King Cab, yeah, actually it should work with the King Cab as well. I did it on Pathfinder pickup because the Pathfinder originally had one of these, not one of the pull-out ones, and I wanted it to look like, I wanted to keep the parking brake because every truck that the exception of the green one and Patches, red truck doesn't have a parking brake, and neither did the Rallycross truck because we swapped cabs on the Rallycross truck and no parking brake from there. But I wanted to do the Pathfinder pickup double dare project and kind of make it as OEM looking as possible. So if somebody, I know that the whole outside of the truck is ridiculous at this point. I'm going for the old race truck look, but I want it to look like, if I pop the hood, I want it to look like that's the proper power plant that's supposed to be in there. Like, you look at that and you're like, I didn't know those things came supercharged. They don't. But the way I have it wired in, the way I'm gonna run everything, it's gonna look like somebody just ran down, all the aisles of Nissan Motorsports with a shopping cart and just kind of dumped a few pieces in there and put them on the truck. Like, I think that it's proper that truck has a blower on it, even if it's not putting out a whole ass load of power or whatever. I still think that the wow factor of popping the hood and being like, oh, well, I didn't know they came like that. It's like, well, it doesn't look like I just, shoved it in there and gave it a good kick. I want it to be like, all the wiring is nicely and neatly laid out and everything. And then when you go inside the truck and you realize that the cab is a two-wheel drive cab, yeah, oh yeah, it is. When you look at it, you say that's the Pathfinder dashboard, which is the same as the hardbody dashboard, but it came out of a Pathfinder. It is from the original Pathfinder body before I scrapped the whole body out. All the wiring and everything, all that's from the Pathfinder. Speaking of that, what is becoming rare in the new parts perspective? What is becoming rare in the new parts perspective? I think like anything that's cool aftermarket is becoming rare. One is because we've got supply chain shortages. That's one of the main reasons. Two, marketing agents don't seem to think, service parts. Oh, okay. You're gonna find like a lot of O-rings and stuff like that, like seals and stuff like that, are gonna become hard to find. I've found that brakes are becoming harder to find too, because your options are starting to shrink. You're gonna be left with just Bendix ceramic, and you know you want to go with something else. I mean, like 10 years ago, these trucks have always been popular. They've always been popular, but they've been popular for different reasons and with different crowds. And 10 years ago, the drift thing was just starting out. At that point, the transition, it seemed like the transition between mini truck and sport truck were starting to pass each other, and the sport truck drift truck thing was starting to take off. And you'll find that you are going to run out of even those kinds of options, because nobody's making anything for these things anymore. I mean, the two-wheel drive drums, and that's the story, it goes back to the two-wheel drive drums for an H233B, were discontinued and were 5 times the price of the four-wheel drive drums, which is how I ended up with four-wheel drive drums on the red truck, was because I was like, I'm not paying that. I'm not paying that when I know that I can go and just swap some other parts around and turn it into a four-wheel drive, brake setup and everything. Drums lately have been terrible out of box anyway. Yeah, you gotta kind of watch what you're buying. You do have to watch what you're buying for sure. White box, I haven't had really terrible luck with white box, but it's always a gamble whether you're gonna get something good or not. It also all depends on installation. If you don't properly grease stuff, and you don't properly clean rust off of surfaces, and take the extra moment to make sure that it's like clean metal on all of it, all of it will fail eventually or become irritatingly shaky. Like I had a Sonata that the previous owners had never done brake services on them and all that. Except the supercharger. The 4.0 engine is not going to accept the 3.0 supercharger, if that's what you're asking me. I think the 4.0 does have a supercharger option. I treat the death of the VG as the end of the Nissan truck as my era. The VQ is a new breed, and it's basically, I personally have never owned a VQ engine, so I really don't have the expertise to tell you what all the aftermarket, except the VG35 blower, I think, or the VQ35 blower. That I don't know. It's very possible that the mounting is the same. It's very possible that the mounting is going to be way off. I mean, the best way to tell would be to take the intake manifold gaskets themselves. It's because it's cheap enough to side by side them, and take the 33 and the 35 and side by side them. I will tell you this: that that mentioning the VQ35. Yeah, match the gaskets and see. Yeah, that's what I would do. That's probably the cheapest way to figure out if it's going to bolt on or not, because I can guarantee you that the supercharger isn't just going to bolt to the manifold without all the extra fixings on it. It's just the way the supercharger is laid out, it has to have that belly pan. There's no other way. Which is why I laugh whenever I go to the junkyard and I find a supercharged Xterra and the blower's gone, but the lower belly pan is still on the truck. I'm like, where are you going with this? I'm like, unless you're replacing an already existing supercharger, you're not going to supercharge anything without the belly pan. I'm sorry, but it's just not going to happen. Unless you are a fabricator and you can make your own belly pan, which I guess if you're going that route. But why do the M62 when you can easily do the M90, and the M90 has way more aftermarket support than the M62 has. And the M62 is a very low pressure, low output blower, and I'm aware of this. I went through a lot of hassle to get a low pressure, low output blower, but I did it because I just wanted it.
I just thought it was cool. I was just like, well, wait, I can bolt a supercharger onto my. Hang on, we're about to lose. We're about to lose video here for a moment. I apologize. I'll be right back. I don't know why all these messages are coming in. Well, we haven't lost video yet, so that's a good sign. As I said earlier, if I get more than one alert from my email, it'll shut the whole phone down, which is dumb. But yeah, to go back to the M62 and why I chose it, I just thought it was cool. What did you say there? Speaking of the supercharged KA, I have never supercharged a KA. It's possible. It is out there. You mentioned Luke suspension parts for the hard body front end suspension. Yeah, I'll have to wait till that pops back up before I can answer that question. I personally have never supercharged a KA engine. I personally do not like the KA engine. I wouldn't waste my time. It's cool, and it's been done. I mean, they are out there. If you type in supercharged KA engine on YouTube, you'll find, ones where people have done it. And it's neat because the way they did it was basically taking the M62 or an M90 and making a custom bracket that mounts to what is inferior about the K? I don't like the timing chain. If you're gonna go, we'll talk about the KA here in a second. I'll get right to that, but let me just say, supercharging it, they used the compressor mount for the AC compressor, and they mounted the blower to that, and then plumbed it in from there. But I think they used an M90 because the way the output is facing and everything like that is better. Or somehow they got it over here on the intake side. They had to have fabricated a custom intake, but I've seen them on both sides, and I think it's really cool. And I'm sure the engine screws, but I don't like the way the rocker arms set up on these trucks or these engines are. I'm not saying it is an inferior engine. It is a very reliable engine, but they all seem to have the same problems. They all seem to run into oiling problems up in the head due to sludge. And what I found is that the rails that the rocker arms sit on, if you don't change the oil on a religious basis, like what I found with my Patches, the hard body truck, and it gets caked in there. Oh, diesel? I don't have any experience with diesel engines, honestly. Yeah, I have not seen an SD engine around in a while. But to tie into the sludge, you don't change the diesel head up. Yeah, good. Yeah, the sludge just starts to accumulate inside the rocker rails, and it just packs in. And next thing you know, the rocker arms are running dry, and just, they just make all kinds of noise. They get clacking noises and stuff like that. They blow exhaust manifold gaskets as often as a Power Stroke does. Oh, I'm sorry, not a Power Stroke. I take that back. A Triton V8, those blow. Like a 5.6 liter, those blow exhaust manifold gaskets quite often. So, yeah. Yeah, it's just not my idea of a superior four-cylinder. I think the SR20, even in naturally aspirated state, is a way more exciting engine. The KA engine is a truck motor. We all know that. It may have started in the 240SX, but it was definitely a truck motor. Done right, they can do it. But I think that you're going to have a way more exciting build if you go with something else. What was the other? The FJ20, I think it was. That was an imported engine that you'd find in like the Bluebird or whatever. Not the CA20, but that would be an interesting NA jet. I always thought that the SR engine these trucks should have come with an SR option. Like if Nissan was to build an awesome two-wheel drive sport truck, I think that it should have come with the SR20 with a turbo on it. That would have been awesome. Factory, not somebody dropping one in and cutting a hole in the floor and doing it, but like a factory, like limited edition SR20 turbo, hard body, two-wheel drive, regular cab, like a little Hustler, and call it a little Hustler.
I think that would have been an awesome build. You know. Yeah, you could do that, but I think you could do a 2400 SR, but I think the 2.0, that's a square motor. The bore is basically the same as the stroke, I guess. It's a square motor. The 2.0 is is the perfect dynamic for that engine, or for a 4-cylinder. I think the 2.4. Oh, they could have. Yeah, they definitely could have made a SR 2400. Nissan doesn't have the balls to do anything anymore. 2JZ. yeah. If you want to cross-pollinate, I suppose. I mean, nothing wrong with the 2JZ. I think Finnegan over there, Faster with Finnegan's putting the 2JZ in. Oh, what the hell is he putting it in? God, I can't remember what it was. Oh, he was putting it in that Charger. He was putting it in the Circle Track Charger that he bought. That's crazy. I think that's funny. It's going to make a lot of people mad, but I think that's cool. But yeah, a 2.0 to me is like a perfectly good square engine. The 2.4, you got a long stroke. Yes, the Death Metal Charger, that's the one. Yes, you're right. The Death Metal Charger is the one that's doing that too, and I think that's just total. He just whipped his balls out and was like, I'm doing it. And I was like, you know what? You keep going. I like that. That's the kind of shit that I like. I think that's kind of funny. Yeah, you get into a 2.4 engine, the stroke is just too long. It's a slow engine. It's a slow reacting engine. And it's just like, it's going to have torque, but it's just not going to wind up like a 2.0 does. We used to race a G20T in Rallycross. Started out with the Audi A6 bi-turbo 6-speed, which was a cool car. It was, it was fun. But that was a pig. It could go fast in the straights. It couldn't turn for shit. But we sold that car and we bought a G20, a 2001 G20T 5-speed, and that engine would just rev all the way up to like 7,500 RPMs. I mean, and I personally went from being like mid to low pack at a rallycross to in the top 10. Just because that car was spot on. I love that car, and I wish we had never gotten rid of it. I can't even remember why we got rid of it. I think we just got out of doing rallycrossing because we were moving on to other projects. We were doing stupid things. Ever drive a? No, I haven't done any Toyota stuff. Yeah, G20 is. I would drive a G20 as a daily. My Subaru is not going to be as fun as a G20, but it is a 2.0. It is a 5-speed, and it is all-wheel drive. And I think that it captures the spirit of the G20 and the fact that it's a cool-looking, squared-off car. It's a nice design car. So I'm proud to drive that thing. But if a G20T came along, and I, wanted to take up another garage space with something that I only drive to get ice cream, that a G20T could find its way into my garage. There's a couple things. An LS 400 would be an awesome car to have in my garage. Second generation Q45 would definitely be something I would love to have in my garage. The G20T would be in my garage. An M30, not a convertible. I'm not a convertible guy. I'm too ugly to drive a convertible. I don't want people looking at the back of my head. But if I could find a hard top, that would be an awesome car to have in there. Obviously, a 610 coupe. A 610 coupe could find its way in here real easily. A 710 coupe. Good luck finding one of those. I do know where there is one, but I'm not going to be able to buy it, and it would never be street legal anyways. But what other Nissans would I throw in there? What is the things that you recommend to make the D20 once you are not understeer as much? Move as much weight out back as you can. If you can do the battery out back, give it. I mean, if you're gonna do the honeybee, hell yeah, I do a honeybee. I do a honeybee in a heartbeat. Those are cool. As for getting it to not understeer as much, I would try and get as much weight out back as possible. Give it a little bit of camber in the front, and then tow it out slightly.
like 3/16 tow out. But don't do that on the road, please. If you do a tow out, it's going to be really, really reactive to steering. Monster Garage. I used to watch that show. I haven't watched it recently. That's a great show. That got me going. The little people that took the 4-wheel drive 720 and turned it into a lowrider. That was my favorite episode. I gotta say, I thought that was the best episode. That was a funny episode. They did a honeybee drift cart. I'll have to look that one up though. But I think I missed that. I think I moved out and I lost my Netflix at that point, so I haven't really had a chance to catch up with everything. But yeah, to answer the understeer question, I would do wait out back, tow it out, but don't do it on the road. Go to the track and then tow it out. Like mark your tie rod ends where 3/16 tow out would be good, and then when you go home, put it back to its original setting. Because if you tow it out and you drive on the regular street, when you go to turns, you're probably just going to spin out in an intersection. It's just going to be way too reactive. And get it close to the ground. The center of gravity is the death knell of these trucks. They really, if you were to put like a gyrometer on one of these trucks, and you went to go and drive, and you'd watch it, a G meter or whatever. I forget what you would call it, but it measures your center of gravity in the truck. How quickly and how ridiculous the center of gravity of these trucks shifts in the slightest of turns. It's just there's just so top heavy that their steering ratio is so slow. I mean, compared to say my Subaru or even a 240. Like that video that came out saying is the D21 the next 240 SX. In terms of my response to that video was no, it's not the next 240 SX. Mechanically, spiritually, probably, because people are going to look for something that's along these lines that's cheap, but mechanically, the speed ratio between those two vehicles in terms of how quickly the wheel reacts, that's where the 240 SX is going to smoke you hands down every single time. Because I think factory, they come with 408 gears in the back, and then they're rack and pinion in the front. These are, when you turn the wheel here, it's like steering a B-52. My first 3 years of driving autocross in one of these trucks was like I'd get out and my arms would just be like killing me. And it's because I was like shifty arms, just going crazy because you'd have to turn it like 4 times to do a simple turn. And I kind of slowed it down. I was watching videos. I was watching the in-cab videos that I was doing and watching what I was doing. And I think the best thing that I did was the Monomax shocks on this thing. The Monomax shocks really changed the dynamics of the center of gravity shift and made it way more reactive. The Slalom was the real test on those trucks. What you got? Have you tried out one of these steering quickeners? I have not tried out a steering quickener. Somebody recommended that to me and everything, but I think what's going to happen with a steering quickener on that, if you do something like that, is that you're just going to end up tearing up the gear, the already mundane and crappy gearboxes that these things have. I mean, the amount of slop that's in them, from the factory is already intolerable. So all you're going to do is you're just going to be